From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 240, recorded live Thursday, November 12th, 2010. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik RAD Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. In this episode, Scott talks with George Clingerman about XNA and indie games for the Xbox 360.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. This week on Hansel Minutes, we've got George Clingerman, who is going to talk to me about XNA and independent gaming. How are you, sir?
Oh, pretty good.
Thanks for chatting with me about this. You know, within the .NET development space, you know, I feel like I'm a pretty engaged community guy, and I know a lot about different community things. But the world of XNA and gaming and managed code on the Xbox is just a foreign thing to me, and I'm kind of a little ashamed in the sense of I try to be plugged in as much as I can, but you know, you just can't know everything. So I said, George is a guy I know who will talk to me about XNA and explain how it is I can write C# and run it on my Xbox. So where do I start?
Well, you start by hitting the recently renamed App Hub forums. They used to be the XNA forums. And there you can pretty much get everything you need to download and get going. It's funny that you haven't touched on XNA yet, being a .NET guy, because in my head, everyone wants to be a game developer. So I find it surprising that everybody who knows .NET just hasn't jumped on XNA. Because really, if you understand how to do .NET programming, it really is not that much more difficult to get up and running with XNA. Once you download the tools, you're in your familiar environment, Visual Studio, programming in your very familiar C#. And there's a few quirks you got to kind of learn about and understand about game development. I mean, if you're a WinForm developer, Windows Forms just kind of sit there and wait for an event to happen. When you're programming for a game, you basically have things constantly happening because you're running in a tight loop. And so that takes some adjustment to get used to. But basically, most .NET developers should be immediately familiar and ready to go within an hour, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And when I go file a new project, I'm doing this inside of Visual Studio Express, or do I have to buy anything? How much money am I going to have to put out?
To get up and running, you actually don't have to invest in anything. If you got a PC that'll run Visual Studio, you can use Visual Studio Express. The default installation actually installs Express for you. If you have the full-blown Visual Studio, if you're one of those lucky guys that actually has it already, you can just add it on to that as well and work in your familiar professional environment. But yeah, you can get going with Express. There's no purchase, and you can actually make games for your PC for free as well.
Oh, okay. So this is the thing that everyone talks about with XNA. If I understand correctly, I can write games for the Xbox, for the PC, for the Zune HD, and for the phone.
Correct. Although Zune, basically, with XNA 4.0, the support for that was dropped.
Okay, so then making games on the Zune isn't really significant.
For the Zune.
Okay. So focus on the phone, the Xbox, and the PC. So if I go and I say, file new project, do I tell it that I'm making a game for all of them, or is it a checkbox? Because I suppose that
it's basically a template you're picking. So you're going to pick, I'm going to make an XNA PC game, an XNA Xbox game, or an XNA Windows Phone 7 game. Now, one of the cool things they've got about that is once you've got started in one of those projects, you actually can just right-click and convert the project to one of the other types as well. So they've got a lot of little nifty little tricks like that where you can start on the PC and be like, oh, I want to make this for the 360 and, target both platforms. And you can pretty much just right-click on your solution and say, make an Xbox 360 project, and it just does it.
I can understand how that'd be possible on the PC and the Xbox. I mean, they both have high resolutions, and but what kind of things do I have to consider that are different? Like when you wrote your first game for kids, did you say, all right, I'm going to be 1080p, or what are some of the initial decisions that you have to make?
Yeah, that's one of the first things you want to do is you want to figure out, what your resolutions are. And then input's the other thing that changes pretty dramatically between, the PC and the Xbox, because you got your gamepad, which will work with it if they have a USB gamepad plugged in, the Xbox controller. But you're not really going to be using a keyboard on the Xbox. So those are two things that basically adjust a lot. And the same thing for the phone. I mean, if you're targeting all three platforms, you probably still could reuse a lot of your code, your physics engines, et cetera. But you're still going to be changing, like, your resolution and your input. But for the Xbox, ideally what you want to target is 1280 by 720. So that's pretty much what background size you're going for. And you want to scale your images accordingly to that. And that's actually a fairly decent resolution for the PC as well.
Is the Xbox not 1080p?
It is. You can develop true 1080p. The 1280 by 720, what happens with that if you target that particular resolution, the Xbox will do all of its scaling automatically for you. So if people are running at different resolutions, the Xbox can handle that by default. And so a lot of developers will just target that because it's an easy route to go.
Okay. And when I, say, file new Xbox game, and I hit F5, and I'm on my PC developing, what happens?
There's one little step you have to do before you hit F5. Basically, you have to have your Xbox and your PC talking to each other. Most people do because they've got Windows Media kind of streaming across to their 360. Mm-hmm. If they're on the same network, usually it's pretty easy for the PC to find the 360. And then there's a little tool on the Xbox that you will download basically from the marketplace called XNA Connect, mm-hmm. and you will have that up and running on your Xbox 360. And that's kind of like a little. It sits there and waits for that communication to start from your PC. And so when you hit F5, it will push out and start talking to that tool and pushing the files across. And then suddenly your wonderfully, beautifully crafted game is now running on your TV and your 360.
Ah, okay. Do I have to unlock it? Or it's just a matter of once I have the XNA Connect, that is the handshake that is required in order to make them talk to each other?
Correct. That's all you need. And basically, it runs first. So anytime you want to start doing your development, you will launch that first on your 360. And it sits there waiting for the computer to start talking. Okay. And now to do the development, there is a cost involved. There is a $100 a year fee to do 360 development. So that's not completely free.
Okay, so when is that required? Is that when I want to upload it to the marketplace? Or is that when I want to see it on my living room?
That's immediately when you want to start pushing your games across to your 360. So if you want to debug and test your games, which is pretty much recommended before you release it to the marketplace, you've got to pay that fee. I see. So it kind of gives you the right to develop games on your 360. Mm-hmm. The neat thing about it is it's a 99% discount from the traditional cost of developing games on your 360.
What do you mean?
Well, traditionally, if you wanted to develop games for your 360, you've got to buy an Xbox 360 dev kit. And usually only studios can get those, and the rumored price for those is $10,000.
Oh my. That's the rumored price. I don't know. Is that true? Do we know that's true?
From the legal documents we've seen, there was a court case, several years ago. And so some of the pricings got released in the court documents. So that is our estimated price. We don't know, if it's changed since then, but that's what most of us quote.
So you pay $100, and now you have a game for kids that's 80 points. What is 80 points? That's like 99 cents?
Yeah, that translates to basically $1.
And how much of that dollar do you get?
I get 70% of it.
Cool. That's not too bad. That seems to be the standard thing, right? Whoever's hosting the App Store takes 30%.
Correct. Yeah, it's a pretty decent deal. I mean, we've had several people in the community over the last 2 years who basically been able to quit their jobs and do game development full time. I wouldn't say there's been a flood of people that have been able to do that, but we definitely have our success stories.
How long has this been around? I mean, I know that the iPhone App Store has been around for a long time, but how long have we had an App Store in the context of Xbox?
For the Xbox, it's been 2 years. XNA has been around for just over 4 years. And then initially it was just PC development. And then they did a little bit of Zune development. And then you could develop for your Xbox 360, but there was no marketplace yet. And then that kind of took some time to get shaped up and happening. And the marketplace has been running for 2 years now.
And where does this show up on the Xbox? I mean, there are probably people who are listening who have downloaded game demos before, and they know where their game library appears, but they may never have actually found this section on their Xbox. Where do I go to find independent games on my Xbox?
It's actually in the same place. So when you're going to go buy an Xbox Live Arcade game, such as Castle Crashers or any of the bigger titles, it's just a few more menu items up. So there's the Xbox Live Arcade games, and then right above that is the indie games. So it's right next to the big boys in the marketplace.
Was it always called indie games?
Initially, the focus was more community, so it was called Xbox Live Community Games. But a lot of people kind of felt that got confusing, that maybe like it was just hobbyists only that were doing it, or maybe it was like more about socializing and less about game development. So there was kind of a push from the community to get that name changed. And then Microsoft responded and changed it to Xbox Live Indie Games.
That's actually a very non-Microsofty name. I like that name. That's way better than Xbox Live Community Games.
Yeah, it's a very cool name.
So what's the difference between...
I did kind of like it when it was community games, because I'm really about the community, so that was kind of a good feeling too. So, but the name change was better overall.
So what is the difference between Xbox Live Arcade games and indie games? Is it just the difference in how much you've paid? Like, why wouldn't everyone want to make their game an indie game and pay less money?
There's several reasons. So Xbox Live Arcade games can charge a higher price point. The maximum price points that Xbox Live Indie games can charge is 400 Microsoft points, which is about $5. So the price ranges for Xbox Live Indie games are $1, $3, and $5. So $5 is the most you can charge for an Xbox Live Indie game. Now Xbox Live Arcade games can charge $20 and more for their downloads. And then there's a couple other limitations as well. File size, the maximum size of the game. Xbox Live Arcade has a higher restriction than Xbox Live Indie games. And then there's some rather large restrictions, such as leaderboards and achievements. Xbox Live Indie games can't do leaderboards, so there's nowhere to have a global high score. And then Xbox Live Indie games can't do achievements. So, which is actually rather large with the gaming crowd, and one of the reasons a lot of us feel that Xbox Live Indie games don't sell as well as they do is that most gamers really like that achievement system. And when you buy an Xbox Live Indie game, it doesn't contribute to your gamer score or to your achievements at all.
I see. And gamer score, leaderboards, and achievements sound like the kind of thing that would make a good game become, viral, as it were, and really popular.
Exactly.
Is there an example of an indie game that made the leap over from indie to arcade?
We've never had a game that started out on Xbox Live Indie games make the transition, but we've had people that started out developing with XNA purely that were kind of targeting Xbox Live Indie games, but before they released, they were able to go to Xbox Live Arcade. We've had, I think, 4 examples of that so far. Typically, it surrounds... There's what's become pretty much an annual contest, although they've never said they're going to do it annually, called Dream Build Play that Microsoft hosts. And the winner of that Microsoft has the right to offer them an Xbox Live Arcade contract. And we've had winners over the past few years that have won that and moved on to Xbox Live Arcade. So their game's still developed in XNA, but they're outside of the indie game section, and they can charge the higher price points and add achievements and have gamer score, and they're much bigger successes in that arena.
Are there a way to tell if a game is written in XNA? I mean, could Splinter Cell be written in XNA and I don't know it? Or is it only indie games?
I haven't had this completely confirmed, but the rumor is that there are more games written in XNA than we realize. I'm not sure why publishers don't want to talk about that, or game developers don't want to talk about that. But we did find out that LucasArts released a game called Lucidity, and we believe it's written in XNA simply because when you download it off of Steam, it installs some XNA DLLs. You can't tell that on the Xbox, obviously, but when you download PC versions of their games, you can kind of get a hint that way. So yeah, there are games that may be written in XNA. It's just not become widespread, which I'm not really sure what the political battle there is.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to write my game so that it works on both Windows and Xbox, is it literally like write once, run anywhere, or do I have to build 2 separate versions of the executable and package it up differently for Windows and Xbox?
You can write once. You'll build it twice, but you can still work out of one solution, and your source code is shared between the two. There are some kind of like getchas and caveats you got to pay attention to. The garbage collection on the 360 is horrendous. So even though you've got a quad core machine that you're working with, it's running the compact framework, and it's version of garbage collection is just horrendous. And so you definitely don't want to like start working on your PC game and be near completion and then suddenly get the idea, oh, I might want to turn this into a 360 game. You definitely want to be working on them in parallel and testing on both platforms at the same time, because there will be times where you've got to like make some adjustments and changes based on like performance on one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say horrendous, like, okay, I assume that's pretty bad. And the assumption, of course, is that the Xbox has like, I don't know, half a gig of RAM and a slower processor from 5 years ago. But like your kid's game that I bought has a lot of stuff going on. I mean, there's a bunch of objects getting created on the screen. It's pretty frantic.
Right. Let's
say that you discover that garbage collection is a problem. What can you as a programmer do to fix that?
It's kind of interesting because I think game development is one of those things that probably has taught me more as a business coder than anything else, because I've actually used a lot of these tricks and techniques from game development in business coding now. But things like for each loops, there's a lot of like boxing and unboxing that happens, which for game development I didn't even really like examine boxing and unboxing of variables and understood what's happening here. But it's those type of things. So you might use a different type of loop or create structs instead of classes in certain cases. And then what's really interesting when you're starting to streamline stuff and getting rid of garbage and watching optimization is you actually start to like inline things rather than like calling methods and creating methods. So you actually start doing a lot of like bad programming practices in order to optimize things.
Interesting.
Those are the types of tricks you're going to use to increase speed. But one of the things we tell people is never pre-optimize. So you usually write your code as you would normally, and then you only start optimizing once you've discovered a problem. So you do a lot of testing and benchmarking and before you start making your code terrible.
Hi, this is Scott coming to you from another place and time. Are you using agile practices to manage your software development? There's lots of tools in the market that manage the steps of a project, but most of them focus on individual roles. Get ready for a solution that caters for the success of the whole team. The guys at Telerik introduced Team Pulse. It's an agile project management tool that'll help you gather ideas, estimate, plan, track progress in a common workspace. Finally, companies, regardless of their size, can use a lightweight and convenient tool that makes all the stakeholders work as a united team, even if they're in different countries. By combining intuitive user interface and the power of Silverlight, Team Pulse removes the roadblocks that you typically face in applying agile in an effective manner. No more lost data, no disparate systems, no lack of critical analytics regarding the health and velocity of your project. See for yourself. Get a free copy for 5 users and 1 project at Telerik.com/TeamPulse. And please do thank Telerik for supporting Hansel Minutes on their Facebook fan page, Facebook.com/TELERIK. Telerik. We do appreciate it. There wouldn't be a Hansel Minutes if there wasn't Telerik helping us. What's considered, and this is very subjective, but what's considered like to be the crown jewel of the indie games? Like, what's the one game or 2 games where you go, wow, I can't even believe that this was done by a regular person and not a game studio?
That one's hard for me to answer because I think I've kind of lost the luster of like looking at studios and seeing them as something that we can't do anymore. It's like once you've done game development for a while, when you're watching a game, you're like, oh, I know how they did that. That makes sense. I could have done that. I mean, we have our crown jewel of the communities just because it's like the biggest runaway success story. But I don't know that like looking at the game, you're super impressed at like what XNA can do. It's just probably the most fun game you've played in a while. I made a game with zombies in it. It's basically just a dual stick shooter where you're destroying a bunch of zombies. But the whole experience is just so incredibly well done. I mean, like from like the music is hilarious and funny. It's a guy singing a song, and the effects are incredible, and he's got the music timed to the game, and there's strobe lights flashing in time to the music, and it's like a game that it's only 13 minutes and 37 seconds long, which is also a nice, fun little geek joke. And it only $1, which he mentions about 5 times in the song. And I think he's made over $200,000 on that game now.
Wow!
So it's kind of our success story. And he's one of the few guys that he won Dream Build Play, the first one, and got his Xbox Live Arcade contract. So he's actually got games on Xbox Live Arcade as well. So he's probably our biggest success story. So if I was going to say like we have an indie crown jewel, Skull Studios, James Silva is the guy, would be who I would say represents our crown jewel.
Well, it's interesting because if you look at the screenshots for this thing, I made a game with zombies in it. It's not. I mean, from a screenshot perspective, it's like, okay, a child drew these zombies. You know, it looks very kind of simple, which I think gets to your point about, you know, it's more about gameplay and style. I mean, he's got a song and he's got music and it's synchronized. These things are really subtle. I mean, it's not.
It
can't judge a book by its
like
cover.
It's how all that ties together that made it so fun.
Is that available on PC also? Do you know?
No, he doesn't have it available on PC. It's a 360 only currently.
Now, why would someone want something only on the 360? It seems like, again, speaking as a person who has never made a game like this, I would want my game to be available as many places as possible. So if I've got all this kind of intellectual property and I've done all this work, I would think, gosh, now that I've got this game I've made a couple $100,000 on, let's put it on a phone and let's put it on the PC.
Right. The phone, I think a lot of people are going to be considering, simply because Microsoft has built a marketplace around the phone. There is no marketplace for the PC. And that's the number one reason why developers haven't moved over into the PC realm, for XNA at least. There's a huge setup cost. Most home computers don't have the XNA redistributable installed on them. So the install package alone is kind of confusing and hard for most people to get right. And then there's just no central distribution center. So there's a lot of overhead for developers trying to, they could create, you know, their own checkout store and host all that themselves, but that's a lot of extra work.
You know, that's a really good point. I mean, people kind of ask what is so important about the App Store. But I mean, I just went to Xbox.com. I clicked on indie games on the marketplace, and then I just sorted by best selling of all time. And then I can see right there, I made a game with zombies in it. And for me to have to go and find that on the web and download it and run setup and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't actually realize this until recently that I can actually go there on my PC now, hit download, and then go to my 360 later, and it'll be waiting for me.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great little feature too. When you've got some huge game that came out recently that you're excited about, and you can start in the morning and just start your download, and then when you get home, there it is waiting for you to play. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
And I noticed that the second most popular game, or one of the most popular games, looks, just initially looking at it, looks like something I would not want to play. Baby Maker Extreme. This looks like a South Park episode. And possibly offensive.
The artwork is a lot like South Park. That's one of those interesting ones. The gameplay is basically a physics type gameplay where you're trying to get this baby that's just been birthed to bounce off as many objects as possible to go the distance. Mm-hmm. So the title is eye catching. The cover art is eye catching, and the gameplay is actually relatively fun, and it's pretty well polished. I think the guy was a genius for just striking that chord with people, because people go, Baby Maker Extreme, what is that? And that already gets him a download.
Yeah, exactly. Just because people want to know what it is.
And then he gets them in there because the gameplay is fun. So I downloaded expecting it to be absolutely horrible, but it's really well polished and it's actually a lot of fun.
Interesting. Are there controls from the Xbox perspective? Like if I don't know, not Major Nelson or somebody in charge goes and says, this is offensive, we're not going to put that in the marketplace. Do people get kicked out of the marketplace or not allowed in for various reasons? Because you always hear about iPhone people who can't be in the marketplace for some reason.
So for the Xbox 360 and the Xbox Live Indie Game Marketplace, it's a peer review system, which means that everyone else, like myself, who released games on the systems, we review other people that are trying to submit games, and we kind of review them for technical defaults and anything that's kind of inappropriate for Xbox Live. And there's a very strict list of things that can and cannot be. Things that are kind of on the fence or that the community can't agree on. You might get some reviewers who are like, no, this is fine. I don't see this as being offensive. They may pass it, and then it can move on to the marketplace. And at that point, the option is that people can report it for abuse, and it might get pulled then later. So Microsoft kind of stays out of the entire process. Microsoft actually isn't even allowed to look in the review or playtest threads at all. So they really only see the games once they've hit the marketplace. So it's really up to the community to kind of police that and kind of set the standard.
That's impressive. I mean, as a concept, I didn't realize that. So you personally can vote on this with the community and say this is good or bad?
Correct. And it's not so much good or bad because we try to take this the subjectiveness out of it. So if I see somebody's game and I'm like, this is absolutely horrendous, it looks like a kid drew everything in here, and actually it could have been a kid who drew everything in there. I can't actually like comment on like whether the game is good or bad. I can only comment on whether it has offensive material or it crashes. So we try to make things like more black and white rather than subjective.
Okay. One thing I noticed in looking at the top 30 games, a bunch of them start with the term avatar. Avatar paintball, avatar drop, avatar golf, avatar showdown. That can't be a coincidence. There's at least 10 avatar games in here. Why is that so significant?
So the Xbox Live Indie Game community supports all types of developers. Some people are in it because it's something that they're passionate about. It's a dream. They're working on their dream game. Some people are just like the novelty of it. There's some high school kid they're putting together. They think it's a great game. Some people are really going about this as a business, and other people are playing to what the community, what the consumer seems to want. And avatar games are selling right now, so they spend a couple weeks throwing together some new type of avatar game, and they push it out to the marketplace. And they seem to be selling. I mean, they stay fairly high in the top downloads list. And so if people are buying them, people are going to make them. So,
well, it definitely seems like some of these avatar games are actually very, very well rated. I mean, I look at that just because something's in the top doesn't mean that I'm going to download it, but then I'll see that, well, this has, 4, like Avatar Ninja has 4 stars, and then you look through the screenshots and you say, oh, this actually looks like someone put a little bit of work into it.
Yeah. Yep. It kind of varies. It's one of the kind of like points of discussion we're having in the community right now is that Xbox Live Indie Games has been around now for 2 years, but if you talk to people, they either don't know about it, or they say, oh, that's where all those massage apps or avatar games are. When really there's like a wide variety of games. We have over, I think it's almost like 1,050 games in the marketplace currently. So there's really something in there for everybody. And there's a lot of very polished games. But it's how do we make that perception that's been, achieved over the last 2 years? And, partially rightfully so, because anybody can release anything they want. And so when you hit the Xbox Live Indie Game Marketplace and you look at, new releases, in any given week, we're releasing basically 3 games a day on average right now from the community. And on any given day, of those 3 games, it's not really expected that, all 3 of those games will be highly polished, works of art. So when someone goes into the store to look at these games, and they're obviously going to look at the new releases because that's what they're used to doing with Xbox Live Arcade games, they're going to see, maybe one decent looking game out of a list of, 25 to 50. And so it's like, how do we manage that perception? And so we're kind of talking with Microsoft right now and talking in the community of, how can we change this? Maybe new releases doesn't make sense for people to land on. Maybe that should not be the landing page because that's not like, it doesn't like equal what it does for Xbox Live Arcade because Xbox Live Arcade has a very, Microsoft controls like the release schedule for Xbox Live Arcade. They try not to flood the market with too many Xbox Live Arcade games. They're polished games that went through a very intensive, QA system. Whereas, Xbox Live Indie Game, anybody can make anything. So, it's a different, type of experience, and we got to kind of figure out how to change, what people are seeing, their perception of it. So,
yeah. I've noticed that myself sitting in my living room and looking at these games, and to be clear to the listeners, I don't know any of these people, so if I mention a particular game or not, this is just my opinion, it's nothing else. But like I see a game here that says it's called Miner Dig Deep, and the box, quote unquote, the box shot looks like a child drew it. And I'll say, well, this is a lame looking box top. I think this looks lame. And then I'll look at the screenshot and I'll say, well, that looks actually kind of nice. So I balance my perception of the game based on, like in this case, low points for box shot, which it sounds ridiculous. Like, what does the box have to do with the gameplay? But it does affect what you think about, like, this person put effort into it. It's like,
oh yeah,
the
definitely.
guy put together a great
It's actually
box.
One of the things I recommend to people that if they're going to invest as an indie game developer, if they want to pay for anything, pay for your box art. So spend a couple $100 to pay for some decent looking cover art.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like for example, I'm looking at this Inside Lacrosse, and it's almost like the box is a ripoff of like a classic sports game like Madden.
Right.
When I say rip-off, I don't mean like rip-off. I mean more like, let's say, homage. But it's like, wow, okay, this person is effectively saying with their box art that lacrosse is a cool game that Electronic Arts has ignored, so I'm making a lacrosse game. and then you look at the screenshots and it looks like that's exactly what it is. Then you balance it with the fact that it's 4.5 stars rated by a lot of people. And you say, well, there you go. Here's a perfect example where a developer felt that the regular marketplace was not serving him and went and fixed that problem, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best things about indie games is that you can basically attempt anything. I mean, it's a perfect sandbox to try anything you want. There's a game out there that doesn't exist. You have the power to go make that. It's interesting, though, that you spend so much decision-making process on, look at the box art, look at the rating, look at the stars, because most of the games are $1. It's strange that like people on their phones do all these impulse buys and don't seem to really care. But when they're sitting down in their living room looking through their Xbox 360, somehow that desire to do impulse buys goes away, or they don't seem to think about it. I was seeing the other day, Major Nelson was tweeting about how this big game was on sale, and it was $25. And I replied to him, I was like, that's 25 indie games. So you're telling me you can buy this, studio-produced game on sale for $25, and you're going to get more fun than potentially 25 original, creative, polished games that no one seems to know or talk about. Like it's so foreign to me that we're not getting the impulse buys we think we should be getting. Like we're trying to figure out what's going on there as well. Why do people not think about that? Why don't we get impulse buys?
That's a really good question. I mean, I've got an iPhone and I spend probably $10 a month on 99-cent games. But when I go to the marketplace, honestly, you can tell they'll be listening to this. You can tell your indie game friends that box art is significant. The title of the game and the box art. And then also when you have a lot of these things, like I'm looking at the indie games and I'm just kind of like scrolling through this giant grid of like 90 games. I see a lot of games for like how to meet women and, like you said, massage games, just things that seem very, very childish and kind of unprofessional. And then after you scroll past like 10 or 20 of those, you'll find something that looks like a real game,
Yeah. The Penny Arcade guys talked about it like it's going to like a bazaar or like bargain bin dumpster diving type thing. Like basically you have to like wander around and look around the corner, and then off in the corner you see this great gem. But like it's the unfortunate thing about the way the marketplace is for us right now is that you actually have to hunt for the good ones. They're not just right there in your face. I mean, right. We could list the good ones. We all know the good ones, but it's hard to get that and it's because that new releases list is what people see. I mean,
well,
we have no way of guaranteeing that the new releases are going to be what's great. And right. It's also interesting because I mean, like the Xbox market is like the demographic is just so skewed, and people are making the games that people are buying currently. Some of our great games just aren't getting purchased, and so what's happening is good developers are leaving the system or looking elsewhere, or they don't see the point because people don't want to buy those date games and all those avatar games and fart apps, and so it's how do we get like the more professional, market who's going to spend, lots of money to start making the purchases on some of these decent games to attract more developers, so that like the cycle goes the other way.
Mm-hmm. If the marketplace is broken, if the way people find these games is broken in the sense of like I'm scrolling through. I mean, the website's pretty good, though. I mean, I've got like best selling today, top rated. These are all things that I can use right now to make a decision. I mean, I could just say sort by top rated, and just using box art as a personal litmus test. If I go and switch it to top rated, immediately everything with the nice box art that is highly rated, that looks good, shows up. I mean, all that stuff that we just talked about that we don't want to see does disappear.
Right. That's what we keep saying is that we think that has a lot to do with his and the other thing, you're on the web right now. Most people don't use the web interface. Most people use the Xbox dashboard.
See, that's my point. On the web interface, I can see 90 games sorted by top rated and then buy them here. But on the web on the Xbox, I see like 5, and all I see is box art.
Yeah, well, that's one of the neat things with the new dashboard update is that now you will see 50. You do have to
will
scroll
I see ratings
because you're
too?
still only seeing 5 to 6 at a time, depending on how big your TV is. But the list is now 50 for scrolling, so that's a nice change for us.
That's good.
But we still need to kind of change what people are seeing first when they hit that marketplace.
Absolutely. Do you think you're going to leave because of this? I don't know. I assume you're still having fun, or you would have stopped by now.
No, I love this. I love this community. I love what I do. I get to make games for the 360. It's like I don't know. Since I was a young kid, the whole reason I even got into development was for games. So I don't think I ever really truly believed it would happen. And then XNA came along. It was kind of like a fluke. Like a lot of things just lined up in the right time. And no, I love this community. There's so much to do. I'm writing a book for Windows Phone 7 right now for game development. So I'm planning on being around and involved quite a bit. One of the cool things about this is the XNA team, the developers themselves, are super active and involved in the community. One of the lead developers for the team is actually one of the highest posters on our question and answer forum. So that I think that's fairly rare. I don't know of too many other Microsoft technical communities that have like the developer actually being one of the highest posters.
Very cool.
So it's definitely a team that listens, and I don't know, the community just it's a really interesting and neat experience, like just being among all these indie game developers who are, everyone's coming at it from different angles. A lot of these guys are trying to make a go of it as a full-time business, and they hang out on Twitter all the time. They're pretty involved in the forums, and it's a great support network. Bouncing ideas off each other, helping each other polish their games. So it's definitely a community I'm planning on being part of for quite a while.
All right. Well, thanks so much for talking to me today. And folks can check out George's website and blog and Twitter. They can link to him from xnadevelopment.com. And I'll also add a bunch of the sites that we talked about in the show notes. Thanks a lot for talking to me today.
Oh, thank you.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.